I never expected love to feel like this. I always believed that love was something that came naturally, like something you could just fall into. But what I experienced was far from simple, far from effortless. It was complicated, beautiful, and destructive in ways I never imagined. It all began when I was 20. I was still in college, full of ambition, and a little too idealistic about what my life was going to look like. I thought I had it all planned out: graduate, get a good job, maybe meet someone special along the way. What I didn't expect was to meet him. His name was Daniel. He was older than me, around 24, and he had this way about him. He was quiet, but there was this intensity to his presence. When he walked into a room, everything seemed to pause. People noticed him, but not in a loud or obnoxious way. There was a calm confidence about him that drew you in. It wasn't just his looks. Though he was undeniably handsome, it was his energy. He had this depth that I couldn't quite explain, and when I looked into his eyes for the first time, I knew I had met someone who was going to change my life. It didn't happen right away, though. At first, Daniel and I were just acquaintances, friends who would pass each other in the halls of the university. But something about him kept drawing me in. Our conversations were always deep. We talked about everything: our dreams, our fears, our ideas of love, life, and everything in between. There was a vulnerability in him that made me feel safe enough to open up in ways I never had before. We started hanging out more. A casual coffee here, a late night walk there. The more I got to know him, the more I realized that I was falling for him. But here was the catch: he wasn't mine to fall for. Daniel was in une relation. Il avait été mis pendant des années, depuis la secondaire. Et bien que je pouvais percevoir qu'il y avait quelque chose d'un peu rare dans leur relation, il parlait souvent comment il l'aimait, comment il construisait un vie. Je voyais l'affection dans les yeux quand il parlait de son nom. Et bien que je tombais faflé court, il était heureux. Ou tant bien même si je croyais qu'il était cela. Et ça, c'était suffisant. But over time, things changed between us. The more we spent time together, the more our connection grew. It was like we could talk for hours without saying a word, and the silence was just as comfortable as the conversations. We could look at each other and understand everything that wasn't being said. It was terrifying. I had never felt such an intense connection with anyone. But I also felt guilty. Guilty for feeling this way about someone who wasn't mine. Someone who had someone else to love. It happened one evening, right after a particularly difficult week for both of us. I had been feeling restless, like there was something missing in my life, something that couldn't be explained. Daniel seemed to sense that. He asked me if I wanted to go for a walk, just like we had done many times before. I agreed, not knowing that this walk would change everything. We walked in silence for a while, the city lights casting shadows on the pavement, the air cool and crisp. But then, out of nowhere, Daniel stopped. He turned to face me, and there was a look in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, a mixture of confusion, frustration, and longing. His voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "I don't know what's happening between us, but I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice shaking. "I'm in love with Emily, but with you, it feels different. I can't explain it. I've never felt this way with anyone before." My heart stopped in my chest. Those words, the words I had feared, the words I had longed to hear, came out of his mouth, but they weren't easy to hear. I wanted to say something, to tell him that I felt the same, but I was scared. Scared of what it would mean, scared of what it would do to him, to me, to us. I could see the torment in his eyes as he looked at me, waiting for a response. I stepped back, feeling the weight of the moment. "Daniel, you're in a relationship. You can't feel this way," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I can't be the reason you walk away from something you've built." He shook his head, frustration and pain etched on his face. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but every time I'm with you, it feels like something is missing when we're apart. I can't keep pretending that I don't feel this connection. You're not just anyone to me. You're everything." The intensity of his words left me breathless. I had dreamed of hearing those words, but now that I had, I didn't know how to respond. Over the next few days, everything seemed to spiral out of control. Daniel and I couldn't stop thinking about what had been said. We were in a constant state of emotional chaos, but I knew deep down that we were both standing at a crossroads. Daniel loved Emily, but his heart was torn between her and me. I didn't want to be the one to break them apart, yet I couldn't deny the feelings I had for him. I didn't want to be the other woman, but at the same time, I wanted him in a way I had never wanted anyone before. We both knew that something had to give. We couldn't continue this way, pretending like we were just friends when the truth was far more complicated. The guilt weighed heavily on both of us. One evening, after a long conversation, Daniel made a decision. He told me that he couldn't be with Emily anymore, not because he didn't love her, but because he needed to figure out what was real between us. He said he didn't want to hurt anyone, but he couldn't keep pretending that he didn't have feelings for me. He promised that he would be honest with her, that he would end things on his own terms. I didn't know what to say. My heart ached for Emily, for the relationship that was about to end. But I also knew that I couldn't keep living in limbo. I had to let him make his own choice. The weeks that followed were painful. Daniel ended things with Emily, but the aftermath was not as simple as we had hoped. Emily was devastated. She had always been kind to me, and I couldn't help but feel like I had stolen something from her, even though that wasn't my intention. I saw the pain in her eyes when Daniel told her, and it tore me apart. Though Daniel and I were finally together, it didn't feel like the fairy tale ending I had imagined. We had broken someone's heart in the process, and no matter how much we tried to explain ourselves, the guilt remained. In the end, we both learned an important lesson. Love is not about possession, it's about choice, honesty, and timing. We had made a choice, but it wasn't an easy one. We had hurt someone else in the process, and that pain lingered long after we were together. As time went on, Daniel and I continued to grow together, but we never forgot the lessons we had learned from our journey. Love is never perfect. It doesn't always come at the right time, and it isn't always free from pain. But it is a choice we make every day, a choice to love someone for who they are, to respect them, and to be honest with them. We eventually grew stronger, but our story was a reminder that love is not just about finding the right person. It's about knowing when to let go and when to fight for what's right. Thank you for listening to this week's episode on Listen Today 2.1. If this confession resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories, love confessions, and life lessons. Join us next time for more heartfelt confessions that touch the heart and soul. Until then, keep listening and remember, love is complicated, but it's also worth it.